a negotiated strategy, just like navigating any difficult conversation. It does not come easy to us. So I thought I'd take a little broader view on that and talk about how to navigate difficult conversations and just touch a little bit about communication, because that's the core of a lot of what we do in terms of leadership, in terms of navigating communication, in terms of navigating conflict. So I'll touch upon that a little bit towards the end. So we'll start off with talking kind of broadly covering burnout. And before we get there, let's try to understand, all of us here, it seems like we're in the medical field and professionals. I don't know if all of us here are physicians, but it looks like it from that look. But really, what does professional fulfillment mean? And in my mind, it really is, a sense of culture of well-being. We need to have efficiency in our practice, because if we work too hard but get very little results, that's really not a fulfilling space. So learning how to be efficient and learning how to be resilient, because adversity is, part of life. We face it from time to time. So really personal resilience, efficiency of our practice, and a culture of well-being, I think encompasses professional fulfillment. And in order to have that, profession is at one hand, we have our work and we have our life and families on the other hand, and how to really bring that together and not in synchrony and not let it be conflicting entities. In my mind, these are the core components of work-life balance. One is learning how to manage time, which goes hand in hand in learning how to be organized, because together that increases our efficiency. The other thing is learning how to be a leader in terms of our own right. We don't have to have a designated, a designation at an institution to be a leader. We can be leaders at our home. We should learn how to delegate work to our children, to our spouse, to hired help. That's part of leadership. And the core of all that is also communication, how to effectively communicate so people want to do or do what they're asked to do. So I think as long as we balance these four pillars, I think, I'm not saying I'm an expert at this, but this is also what I continue to aspire to improve upon as I walk through life. So talking about efficiency. So how to be efficient? One of the important things is to recognize that efficiency is also learning how to complete tasks. Duncan Maxwell, who's the author of Mosque of Notre Dame, he said, inefficiency begins when you avoid a few trivial, unpleasant tasks. Soon the backlog grows into a hideous monster, devouring your mental energy, obscuring your vision, and strangling your will to shape your future. The only way to slay the monster is to begin a life of glorious suffering. Embrace the pain of finishing things. And we've all been there. We all have multiple tasks, multiple deadlines to finish, and really learning how to take little things at a time truly prevents us from being burnt out in the end and not finishing tasks and feeling poorly about ourselves. So if we have a task that we know we want to finish, really, we got to start by planning how to get it done, right? So project planning, whatever it is, whether you're writing a manuscript, whether you're trying to submit your grant, whether you're trying to do any big project at home, whatever you're trying to do, starting with a plan. So some of the things to consider when you're planning a project are, why are you doing this project? What's the purpose of this project, right? So really trying to set a mental frame of the importance of that project to your goal in life or your mission, whether it's short-term or long-term mission. And what resources do you have available? Understanding, what are the things that you can utilize to help you accomplish that project? Are there other people that needs to be involved to help you do the project? What are the potential obstacles? Always think in your head, like it takes literally 2 minutes to think about this whole project planning. It does not need days of work. It just needs to, you think of a work that needs to be done and you think in your head, okay, why is this important to me? Is it important enough for me to do it now? Well, how can I get it accomplished? What are the potential problems? And if I do see a problem, how do I fix it? And what is the timeline? Setting deadlines is so important. And really, what is the goal? What's the end point of this project? What do I want to accomplish? So when we start doing this, when we have a project plan, talked about efficiency and embracing the pain of doing little things. As an academician, writing grants and manuscripts and meeting deadlines is a big part of my life. So I'll take an example of, let's say, writing, but really the example here is about engagement, regular engagement in the task that you're trying to accomplish. So if I take an example of writing, if you need to get it done, we need to write regularly for long enough to make progress and frequently enough to stay engaged. So when I write a manuscript, for example, if I write the first paragraph, I don't leave it there if I need to stop. I start the second paragraph, one or two lines in the second paragraph. So when I come back to it, I don't have to go through that inertia of trying to figure out how to start this. So if you leave just one line or two lines, you've already prepped yourself when you come back next to it. So really trying to do it in small intervals, try to keep it every few days to at least once a week, and trying to keep session length long enough to make progress. Sometimes it takes us so long to get started that 40 minutes, 45 minutes has passed, and no work is done, and we lose the motivation and give up. So really continue to prime yourself. Preparation time for subsequent writing truly decreases if you just start that sentence for the next time. And the same thing goes with any other work you do. Your prep time decreases if you plan exactly what the next step should be when you come back to it. So engagement, frequent engagement, and engagement in the sense to decrease the inertia. So you've already recognized what the next step should be when you're on it on your previous session. And then creating that. Sorry, was there a question? Okay.
I think it was just an echo.
Okay. Creating deadlines is, I don't think I can speak to this any more than all of us here. Deadlines really keep us going. This is really the life cycle of things, how things happen. The time spent and pages written really increases drastically towards your deadline. And that's true for any project, whether you're writing, whether you're working on any home project, whether you're doing any substantial work that's important to you. I think setting a deadline, if there's no external deadline, set your own internal deadline, because that's the time that you've dedicated for that specific project. Set that deadline, be done, and move forward. I think improves your efficiency. The other thing that could help you is to have a dedicated focused time always. So what I do in my calendar, if I have a big project that I need to accomplish, my admin assistant has access to my calendar, and she starts putting meetings on my calendar, but I block a certain time. I usually block my morning time, which is when I'm most productive in my calendar, as my productive time. So if I need to do anything there that I have a dedicated task, I use that time to do it without any meetings. But if I don't have any time, I use that time to just spend with my family, just do nothing and enjoy, but I have a dedicated time in my calendar, and that keeps me very, less stressed about my day, because I know I have that protected time, no matter who adds new meetings on my calendar. So trying to protect your time in your calendar is important if you're someone who has, everyday meetings, and a very demanding job schedule. And really also understanding the tasks that you need to do, like creating a list of currently active projects. What are the things that you need to accomplish? And understanding deadline for each of them. And trying to really, like I said, engaging and doing things in piecemeal. There's an app called Focus Keeper, which lets you, keep focus for 25 minutes at a time, and ask you to take a break. So if you're a person who are not used to learning how to focus, maybe using some of those apps could be helpful. Also having an accountability partner. If you're not self-accountable, which sometimes it's hard to be, find a partner, whether it's your spouse, your work colleague, someone to say, hey, I've said I will get this task done by this date, and create your schedule and set yourself accountable for it. And then really, one of the things that causes or increases stress is multiple unfinished tasks that really ponders around our head all the time. And there's something called Zeigarnik effect. What it really means is people remember unfinished or interrupted tasks way more. It weighs on your head than the completed task. And they did this, Zygarnik, I think, did this experiment in a restaurant. Servers, they would know exactly what order each table had as long as the tables were open and they were serving. As soon as the tables closed and people paid and left, they had no clue and they could lift that burden off their head. So trying to limit work in progress really can be very relaxing to your mind and decrease the burden overall. So really trying to prioritize getting things done, setting timeline, and choosing the most important tasks to be done first is really the important way to be efficient. And of course, not multitasking, setting aside a defined time to check emails, whether it's upon awakening in the morning or towards the end of the day, and limiting interruption by self or others is really important. And I also said work stratification, right? So really recognizing what's the most important thing to finish at this time is really, really helpful for you to not just be efficient, but also work towards a fulfilling engagement in whatever you're trying to do. So one of the most important things is we all have so many things to do. And sometimes it's so easy to be confused about which should I start first? Which should I do next? There's all this extra work left at home. You have to drop your kids to school. You have to help them with their homework, maybe. You have all these extra activities. So how do you know, like, what's the most important work? What's the thing that needs to be done now versus things that you can push to later? Well, what's helpful is to understand the types of work, that there are two main types of work, right? There's deep work, which is valuable and meaningful to you as a person and helps in your growth in your life mission. So those are deep work. And then there's shallow work, which is not very cognitively demanding. And they're usually logistical style tasks that needs to be done, look urgent and important, but technically overall does not help you fulfill your goals. So really listing those tasks and understanding what's deep work, what's shallow work. So maybe all of you, this is May, so that for the next 2 months, you can think about what are the tasks that are currently on my plate that I have to do, and which of those work counts as deep work, and which of those work count as shallow work. Understanding that is really helpful in prioritizing work. The other way to prioritize is also based on importance and urgency of work, especially if we are strapped at time. If we really don't have enough time, it's really important to prioritize. So here on the y-axis, you have the importance of the work. So the top left is the most important work. And on the x-axis, there's urgency, like things that need to be done now. So top left is the most important and urgent work. Top right is important, but not so urgent work. Bottom left is not important and urgent work. And bottom right is not important and not urgent. So what does that mean? So important and urgent things like, meeting your deadlines. And for clinicians, it's like going to your office to see patients or hospital to see patients. For students, it's studying for a test. Those things, they can't be pushed back. So we do them first, right? Important but not urgent are important things that helps your overall life mission, or that helps your self-care, helps you be a better person in whatever way. So something like spending quality time with your kids and family, reading that book you've always meant to read that inspires you, things like that. They're important to you, but not that urgent. So those things we can do later. Right? So then there's other category of work which is not important but urgent, like doing laundry, like you have to go to work, so you need clean clothes, cooking food, like you're going to be hungry, you need to eat, cleaning the house, you need to live in that space. Those are not important work that does not improve or elevate your overall life mission, but they're urgent. They need to be done in order to do your daily day-to-day function. Tasks like that need to be delegated, whether it's a paid help, whether it's someone else you can ask in the house. I mean, besides paid help, I ask my kids to delegate to my kids, my spouse, whoever I can find to do the work that saves valuable time for me to do high value work that, moves me closer to my life goals. And then there are work that is neither important, nor urgent. Like, you committed to meeting an acquaintance that you don't really have connection with. or you want to go watch a movie that you're not really committed to, whatever. Those work that's not truly work, that's important or urgent, you can completely eliminate. And these are things you do that when things are very busy, you're strapped on time. But if you're not busy on your relaxing time, you can do number 2 and number 4, any amount of those things whenever you want, right? So when you're strapped, try to prioritize. The next thing I want to touch upon, shifting gears here a little bit, and it's still relevant. I want to spend a few minutes to talk about our frame of mind, right? Our performance at home and work. It's really dependent on how we view the world, what our frame of mind is. So there are really 2 types of frame of mind, mindset, technically. One is a fixed mindset, which is a belief that we have a fixed amount of intelligence and ability, and that we are who we are. And then there's a growth mindset that we have a belief that people can learn and grow with practice, with perseverance and effort. And really, fixed mindset, what that leads, it helps us believe that we are who we are. This is how smart we are. This is how capable we are. And this leads to a desire to look smart, because that we don't want to look bad. We believe this is who we are. We want to look smart, and therefore a tendency to we want to avoid challenges because we don't want to do something that's hard that makes us not look good. We want to give up easily. We want to see effort as fruitless or worse. We ignore useful or negative feedback because we don't like criticism. We don't think that helps us grow because we are who we are. And we feel threatened by the success of others. As opposed to that, there's the growth mindset, which is the belief that intelligence and abilities can be developed, right? And this leads to a desire to learn, and therefore a tendency to embrace challenges, that we want to do better, we want to learn better, so we like challenges. We persist in the face of setbacks. We see effort as a path to mastery. The more we do, the better we get. And we learn from criticism. So we don't really hate people who criticize as long as they're constructive criticisms. We learn from people's feedback, and we find lessons and inspirations and success of others. So we're no longer jealous, we're not threatened, but we're like, oh, we get inspired by other people's success. So if you have a fixed mindset, there's a tendency to plateau early and not be able to reach full potential later in life. And there's this deterministic view of the world, like I know it, and this is it, this is my life, as opposed to growth mindset, where we believe we can reach higher levels and we continue to grow over time. And that gives us a greater sense of free will and development as we walk through life. So one of the most important things, and I bring this in the context of burnout, because it's the mindset for burnout is exactly, if you have a growth mindset and if you view challenges in a positive way, that helps us build resilience over time. And I'm going to talk a little more about some of that in the next few slides. So developing a growth mindset is really not a one-time thing. It's something that you ponder upon these questions on a regular basis from time to time. Like, what are the opportunities for learning for myself and others around me? And when we make a plan to do some things, we always need to understand where, when, and how will I embark upon a plan, and what can I do to continue on my growth? This is a really important question. What can I do to continue on my growth? There are different opportunities that come our way. Some we take, some we don't take, and those are choices we make. But really be very mindful and very focused on what are the things that will continue to help me grow. And that's different for all of us. Growth is different for all of us. Our life goal, our mission is different for all of us. That's why we need to individually understand and determine what is most important to us and what will help us grow. Having said that, it is also very, very important to realize that we're all very different, very special in our own, and have our own unique abilities. And the competition to grow should only be with ourselves. If you continue to strive to be better than the older versions of ourselves, the progress is limitless. But if we try to compare our lives with the next person beside us, then there's a plateau of the growth if your measure of success is the next person next to you. And secondly, that creates a sense of you feel threatened by the other person's success, and that's never something you want to do. So I really, really love this quote by Einstein that says, everybody's a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. And that's exactly so true in my mind, that we all have unique capabilities. We all have the ability to grow it to an immense measure, as much, based on our effort and in whatever we want to achieve. But we really want to continue to make that growth and measure that to our own prior success and not to anyone's success. All right, so with that background, I guess we can talk a little more about burnout, what it means, and what are some of the ways that we can maybe come out of it. So stress, it's traditionally defined as a physical, chemical, or emotional factor that causes bodily or mental tension, and it may be a factor in disease or causation. So that's kind of like a traditional definition of stress. Burnout, on the other hand, is a state of physical, emotional, or mental exhaustion caused by high amounts of prolonged stress. And then there's components to burnout, which can be emotional exhaustion, where you feel like, I just can't do this anymore. There could be a sense of depersonalization, where you feel like every good deed gets punished and you're so cynical, you don't want to give any effort. Or you could have low personal accomplishment, like you feel like no matter how hard I work, nothing improves, so why care? And there are other ways people have defined burnout, like Mashlak says burnout is an erosion of soul. Shanna Felt defined burnout as culture of endurance, and Beckman defines burnout as failure of adaptive reserve. So in general, like, it's so easy to view burnout and stress as just a bad thing, right? It's so common, especially more common in early trainees, in residents. And this is one of the, I think, published paper, I believe in JAMA. I need to go back and look at the sources again, but there was 25 to 60% of medical trainees report burnout. And remission is about 50% at 12 months. So this is like really, really an important topic in healthcare, especially in early years of training or junior faculty or even mid-career faculty. So something really important for us to acknowledge and address. So that's one way to look at burnout, just a lot of stress, really bad, that limits our potential for growth and advancement. So anytime a patient's come to us, we want to understand what the problem is so we can fix it, right? So we need to understand the cause of burnout in order to be able to address it. So what are some of the causes of burnout? I think there are four main causes of burnout. And one is lack of sense of balance, right? Like, you don't feel like you're in the right career, you feel so overworked. And we just talked about project and time management and efficiency, building efficiency, how we can manage being overworked, how learning to prioritize things can help us manage that. And then also learning how to balance the work and home dynamics. The other factor is psychological factor, which you feel alienated, you feel like you're in moral distress, your affect or mood regulation is affected, you have, lack of mental stability. And these are psychological factors that we can balance by changing our frame of mind and having a positive mindset and resilient mindset, which we'll talk about in next couple of slides. And there are physical factors where we have trouble sleeping, where we're in pain, have disease discomfort, some kind of illness. So really, these are things, some are under our control, some not under our control. But most of this, like learning how to be efficient, learning how to be organized, learning how to manage time, these are things that we can change. Psychological factor, mindsets, things we can change. Physical factor like sleep, there are healthy habits that we can build to address sleep. Seeing your physicians regularly, to having regular checkups and your screenings, important to minimize the risk of being sick. And so some of the things that are under our control. Institutional factors like unsupportive at work environment, demanding work environment, very high productivity pressure, low control with high responsibility. Those are things we cannot control. But as long as we control the things that we can't control, we can significantly minimize and eliminate burnout. So the answer to getting out of burnout really is resilience. And I'm talking to a group of psychiatrists, but the American Psychological Association defines resilience as the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threat, or even significant sources of threat, right? And then resilience is also the ability of an individual to respond to stress in a healthy, adaptive way, such that personal goals are achieved at minimal psychological and physical cost. Resilient individuals not only bounce back rapidly after challenges, but also grow stronger in the process. And in times of stress, really, we should focus, I think it's really important to focus on the purpose, right? What positive impact do I want to have on people around me? Not just like what bad things are happening to me, but really like, take a step back from the situation that you're in and you feel really stressed out. And like, what is my overall purpose? What impact do I want to have in this world? What things can I change? What things can I not change? And then really reframing the question, like, what is the challenge? Like, this is a challenge. This is a stressful situation in my life. What is the challenge that I'm facing that needs to be tackled? What are my choices? Who are my allies? What are my commitments? What are my responsibilities? And what are not my responsibilities? Because we can't plate everybody else's responsibility to burden ourselves. So really learning to separate out, taking a step back, reframing the question about not feeling drained about this is happening to me, but really taking a step back, looking at the bigger picture and understanding, okay, why am I a part of this? Why am I going through this? What are my choices? What is the challenge here? And how do I tackle this? What are my resources? And a good thing is resilience is, again, a mindset, right? How you view things. And anyone can learn to do that. And this book is really, really a great book called The Upside of Stress by McGonigal. And she defines stress in an alternate way. She says an alternate way to look at stress is to cultivate a mindset that embraces stress and activates the brain's natural ability to learn from challenging experiences. So instead of saying, why is this happening to me? This is so bad. So just take a step back and just observe what is going on. So what happens? Symptom is when you are stressed is there's a fight or flight reaction, which is your sympathetic surge that you're having. Your heart is racing, your body's sweating, your breath is quickening, you're feeling restless. Instead of saying, oh, I'm feeling so uncomfortable, one of the ways to look at it is, wow, I have more energy and courage to fight and flee, right? You can have this heightened sense of energy that helps, that's directed towards you to move away from the threat. And so that is helpful for you. So take that negative thing, change your frame of mind to say, okay, I have this better ability to respond to my current situation. And that's, the symptom of facing a challenge is, similar, your emotional perception of that challenge is similar to fight or flight response. You continue to have this heightened sense of focus, energy, motivation. Use that drive that you get towards something positive, to rise above the challenge, to try to go beyond what's happening in the space now, to move forward into a bigger mission of what you're trying to accomplish as a person. And then also it helps us wanting to be close to our friends and family, sharing what's going on. Times of stress makes us closer to people. So utilize that to build your community, build connections with people, and, build people around a circle of trust around you. So that's a positive side you can turn when you're in stress. The other thing is to continue to learn and learn through the process that can make you more resilient, because that learning through that process, internalizing that, letting your body's emotions settle, and overall recovering from it is a process you go through that ultimately helps your maturity and helps you become a stronger individual. So taking all the negative points to seeing positivity out of it, I think is really helpful to move forward. And again, that's the mindset. If we create that mindset, if we create a positive mindset, that brings positive behavior, and positive behavior affects how we work every day, and that brings positive results. So in some ways, stress can be viewed as a good thing. That can be viewed as for example, I'll give you an example. If someone says, oh my gosh, there's no way you can accomplish this. There's no way you can get this grant. There's no way. Instead of saying, oh my gosh, that person doesn't think I deserve this. The person doesn't think I can do better. Instead of saying that, we could say, oh, that person doesn't think, why I can't do it. I will show that person. I'll use this energy and motivation to prove that person wrong. And that's a positive flip to how we do things. So being mindful, of course, takes practice, and being mindful is something that is just like how our body needs an exercise, our mind needs an exercise. And mindful practice is basically a moment-to-moment purposeful awareness of our own mental and physical processes during everyday work, with the goal of practicing with clarity and compassion, right? And this helps our psychological factor that causes burnout. If we're mindful, that addresses the psychological aspect of burnout. And there are three components of mindful practice. That's your intention, right? Your sense of purpose, your vision, the direction you're heading in life, which will continue to change as you walk through life. It evolves as you grow as an individual. And then there's the attention, that what we notice, what we choose to ignore, what we choose to pay attention to, and these are all choices we make. We make choices in our intention, we make choices in our attention, and then we make choices in our attitude, how we construct the world, our observation around us, right? Like how we judge them, how we perceive things. It's so important to have mental flexibility, right? For example, if you're seeing a patient who's just complaining and whining, one way to think about this is, oh my gosh, this patient is so whiny, I'm so sick of this. Or the other way to think about this is, oh my gosh, this patient is complaining and whining, that person must be suffering a lot. What can I do to help this person, right? So there are two sides to every single aspect. So being very open, having that beginner's mind, having a curious mind that you're open to seeing things from different aspects, as opposed to a fixed mindset where we're like, oh, I know what this is bad. That creates less learning. Having a fixed mindset, again, like makes you just very fixated and burn out easily. So really keeping that open mind, staying curious and open to possibilities around you. And really, when your attitude is also, if you're with a patient, if you're with a family member in distress, whatever, your presence, right? Truly being presence, bringing empathy, emotionally engaging with person, having the, not being reactive. And this is something like the course Vipassana teaches too, like not being reactive to things is so important. There's so much emotion all around us, but if we can just perceive emotion as an entity and just watch it and not react to it, I think it's harder said than done, but it's, again, with practice, with effort, and with time, something that's achievable. And maybe to start off, just 2 to 3 minutes, 5 minutes a day before bedtime, thinking about, how do I think about interactions you've had through the day or past week, and think about, what was my intention in doing that? Was my heart in the right place? Does that even matter to me in the long run? Was that a situation I should have paid attention to? Was that a situation I should have avoided? Was my attitude a helpful one? Was it open? Or was I too fixated? So keeping those things in mind will help us be better when we can't come across similar situations down the line. And again, like burnout, like if we're constantly thinking something that's happening to us is a bad thing without keeping an open mind to the possibilities, then that becomes a fixed problem for us. So some of the reflective questions we can ask that invites attentiveness, curiosity, like that beginner's mindset, being open to see things in a different way, and presence. Some of the questions you can ask when we're doing mindful practices: what ideas and feelings are affecting my ability to observe, right? Like what is kind of draining me out? What is it that's happening to me? A lot of times we just perceive that sense of pain or discomfort that's happening to us, but really don't take the minute to analyze what exactly is going on. And if you really do, I challenge you to do that. If you really try to be mindful and think about what is it that's happening to me, most of the time it's really nothing. You just perceive that sense of discomfort. It's like kids, right? They're hungry and they're whining. There's a very minimal discomfort. There's food all over the house. All they could do is eat and all their discomfort would be solved. They just don't know, but they just are whining all the time, not knowing what's happening to them. So if you just take a second, and that happens even to us as adults, if you just take a second to understand what is the sense of discomfort, why am I feeling this? Oftentimes than not, it's not that big a deal. It's not unfixable thing. So really trying to take that time think through this and trying to understand what is unique to the situation. I've lived my life through all these years. What's different that's making me so uncomfortable? And am I assuming that things that might not be true? Like sometimes it's just in our head that, oh, someone thinks I'm bad, or someone said bad about me, or it may not even be true. Like, am I assuming things? Always make sure you're not. And how have my prior experience and expectations affected the situation? Like, am I misinterpreting what people have said just based on my prior interactions? And are there things that I present as fact that are not quite clear? We have such strong beliefs that what we say is right. Each of us do. Like, we believe we're right and we know it. But maybe if we keep that open mind and be willing to see the other side, that will help us not see this as a problem anymore, because maybe we're in the wrong. And what would a trusted peer say about the way I manage the situation? Always have that, one friend or a family, your mom, your spouse, whoever it is that you feel like have truly your deep interest. And what would that person say if they knew I behaved this way? So if you think through those things on a regular basis, have a mindful practice, that kind of, I feel like, helps us become a more aware individual, and helps us address adversities in a better and tactful way. So some of the physical things, we talked about psychological things, we talked about, time management skills, and some of the physical factors that are under our control, like learning to have a healthy sleep habit, eating healthy, doing regular physical activities, being very protective about your time to spend with your family and your spouse, having some hobbies that can bring you joy, having some downtime from work, if you're into spiritual engagement and that brings you peace, having that time. Of course, minimizing electronics. It's kind of interesting. I'm saying this while being on Facebook platform, but minimizing electronics and social media specifically, I think that's really helpful to give us some much needed self-care. And of course, to avoid illness and pain and bad health, learning to have a PCP. We need to at least have a regular checkup, and mental health providers like all of you here if we need help to talk about things. So really trying to be conscious about our own health and our own well-being is really, really important. And sleep, as we know, is very important. Some of the ways to improve sleep is to have a consistent sleep schedule, regular bedtimes, and it depends on person to person. So trying to sleep for as long as you need to feel fresh when you wake up, somewhere between 6 to 8 hours, I think, for most of us, and evaluation of sleep disorders if we have one, and limiting medications or drinking caffeine after 2 p.m. All these things that you all know. So really, sleep hygiene is important. So once we learn how to be resilient and how to stay healthy, how do we foster moving forward? How to have the right frame of mind to tackle the difficult aspects of our life? How to continue to foster that is through making connections, right? Having talking about things with your partner, with your friends, with your colleagues, learning how to reframe how we interpret things in our life and how to respond to events based on our experiences, really having that mindful practice, thinking through situations, learning how to reframe questions, not always taking things like, people are saying negative things. Most of the time they're not. Most of it is our perception, learning how to really see things for what they are, learning to accept change as a part of life and moving towards our goal in a meaningful way. Really try to look at the big picture, right? Little things here and there truly don't matter in the big picture of your life, and you're in your own competition with yourself, with nobody else. So really trying to find your own purpose, being that own unique self, finding your own meaning in life, taking decisive actions, looking for opportunities for self-discovery, nurturing our positive attitudes, and always, taking care of yourself, finding rest where we can, building family friend connections. And there's this website from American Psychological Association, Road to Resilience, that apa.org. They have a topic on resilience if you want some more insight on that one. So in summary, really burnout and resilience is really a spectrum. It's a continuum, right? Most of us are somewhere in between, right? So if you're burnout, you feel really withdrawn. If you're not burnout, you feel highly engaged. If you burn out, you may feel emotionally exhausted, as opposed to being very energized when you're resilient. If you're burnt out, you are just walking through life without knowing what you're doing. You're just doing your daily task, as opposed to feeling like you're a part of a mission and accomplishing a goal when you're resilient. If you're burnt out, you're worn down, you're brittle. But when you're resilient, you're like, okay, this is just a little setback. I'm not breaking, I'm moving forward. So all these qualities, burnout and resilience, it's really a spectrum. There are times when we feel in the low end, there are times when we feel on the high end. Most of the times we lie somewhere in between. But again, our perception towards things, our mindset towards things, our maintenance for health, self-care, our mental ability to see things in a positive light really, really can push us over to the continuum towards resilience and avoid burnout. And once we feel we're competent, we're not burnt out, we're doing better, then also learning how to help others, because that builds community. And when we need help the next time, they'll help us back, right? So really recognizing burnout in people, if they feel like they're really irritable, they're not sleeping, they're not concentrating, if they always express feelings of hopelessness, if they always talk about being so distressing memories and just being avoidant, being dissociative, one should recognize that, okay, our friends, colleagues, spouse, whoever it is, may be burnt out. We should respond, offer to talk to them very calmly in a very neutral space, give them time, really stay emotionally engaged, allow them to tell their story, and refer them for help, provide whatever help you can offer them. There's some online help resources I have here. And then also, whether you need to talk to them at home, talk to their support structure or work supervisor, whatever it is that you can do to offer help. So really, for burnout, we talked about how being efficient through time management and organization skill, learning how to prioritize things will help us be efficient and organized and help prevent burnout. How to learn to delegate things that are not truly important and urgent for us to accomplish. Delegate things that don't fulfill our mission. And in that you would need, whether it's paid help or find your social support structure within your family or outside your family. And then that is helpful in work-life balance. And we're going to talk a little bit about communication, right? Communication could be work negotiation, salary negotiation, or any kind of conflict resolution. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So switching gears to that. So whenever, I'll pause there to see if there are any questions. Is it okay if I continue to go on?
Maybe like do everything towards the end, because then, when there's flow of conversation, this gets disrupted. Please feel free to go ahead. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So moving towards, navigating difficult situations and kind of like I'll embed the salary negotiation aspect here, I guess. So really, when you're going into a conversation with someone, whether it's a difficult conversation or you're asking something, you really want to be very clear about what's your ask and what your relationship is, right? Like if it's a relationship like your mom, you can technically ask anything. If it's your boss, you can't, and you have to have a certain way to ask, right? So there are different negotiating styles. The various negotiating styles that people have defined is like a competing style, which is you just care about getting your needs met. You don't care about the relationship. So you just go in, like whatever you need to do, you get your needs met, and you don't care about what happens to the other person you're asking from. So that's probably not what you want to do when you're trying to negotiate salary. The other is the compromising style, where you are always the one who get the short end of the stick, and you're always like compromising. You're like willing to give whatever the other person say, and that's probably not the right negotiating style, and something probably what leads you to burnout if you are compromising all the time. The other style is the collaborative style, where you go into a conversation, you bring in the strength that you have, and build a relationship, kind of like a win-win, like bring what you have on the ground and ask them to offer what they have, and kind of really have a collaborative approach where everybody wins. And that's probably the right approach when you're trying to do salary negotiation. The other one is the accommodative style, which is you, in order to save the relationship, you don't care, you do it at your own expense. Whatever they say, you agree to that. You probably don't want that. Again, increases your burnout. And the next one is avoidant. You don't want to interact or negotiate because you're too afraid of course, you don't want to do that either, right? So really collaborative approaches, bringing the win-win situation is probably the best approach when you go into salary negotiations. So when you go into a conversation, you really need to understand, like, who are you, right? So what have you told yourself about who you are, your value, the value you can bring to the team, and also be aware of your impression that people may have held, right? So it could just be if they know you, like if most of our circles are really, for example, I'm a neurointensivist, my circle is really small. If I need to hire somebody, I can talk to one other person, like everybody knows everybody. So it's so easy to have people's impressions. So really important to not just know who you are, but also understand what impressions other people might have had about you, right? And then it's also really important to understand how stories are made. Stories are made by data. People draw conclusions based on that. They decide, and that leads to action, right? So the lesser the data you have, the more assumption there is, right? So if your data, if you have a poor history, poor CV, you go in and provide all that in the data, that leaves no room for assumption, right? But if you have a really great background, done great work, and you don't put it in there, then people will assume you haven't done anything in between, right? So really important to know when to put more data and when to put less data. So when to leave things to imagination, when not to leave to imagination. So when you're trying to sell yourself, be very aware of who you are, be very aware of what your overall impression is in your community, in your medical field, or whatever you practice in, and be prepared to talk about your positive things and have a personable skill and a conversation skill that we're going to talk about, right? So never bring yourself on the table in your emotional basement. Never be emotional, because that's when people don't take you seriously. You're more likely to be able to choose the right negotiating style if you're more calm, prepared, and composed. So it's easy to be less emotional if you're well prepared. So always, before going into a major whether it's a conflict resolution, talking to your boss, negotiating salary, practice, so that you have less emotion and more facts, and you can really use your prefrontal cortex to talk about things in a genuinely meaningful manner rather than being in an emotional state. So so this is, again, like, don't go in and talk in an emotional state, because that brings you a primitive threat response, and that does not help you in any way. So you've got to think about, how important this conversation is to you. Is this trivial? How important is it that you depending on the importance of it, the more practice you need. And you also need to understand, think about it, like, do you really have any influence on the situation? If I go in and ask my boss to raise my salary by $100,000, do I have any influence in it? I have to think about, okay, so I can say, okay, I brought in this much money, this many grants, I'm leading this, I'm doing this education, I have these kind of trainee evaluations that gives a stellar evaluation, this and that. So you have, like, think about all the good things that you've done. Like, what is your influence? And if you don't like what you're seeing, you leave the institution today, what is there for them to lose? Right? So always understand your value, always know who you are and what accomplishments you personally have and what you've brought to the organization. Like, you're constantly invited to national, international meetings to talk about things. That's an organization's name being placed out there, right? You're publishing all the time or whatever. I mean, you don't have to do any of this in your own field. whatever you feel is important about your work that you're doing when you're contributing, be very aware of that and make sure the person you're negotiating is aware of that. And then always have a BATNA, which is your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. You say, you know, I want 100,000 salary raise, and they say, okay, I can't do more than 50. Is that acceptable to you? Is that the best alternative that's acceptable to you? Because if the first thing is not acceptable, you need to know what my plan B is. What would be acceptable? That would keep me here or not. So, and really understanding who you're negotiating with, what kind of person is there, what is their story, what do they want, what's their interest, is there a way to bridge their interest with yours? Like if they want to, let's say, build an education curriculum, and then you could say, hey, you know, I can take this initiative and I can do this, and in return you do that. So that would be a win-win collaborative negotiation. So really understanding what they truly want before you go into a conversation. And are there things that are of similar interest to them and me that we can merge? So being very aware before going into an important discussion is so important. So when we actually go in to talk to people, the number one thing I think that is not taught, it's very subtle, it's, you know, it's understood, but not everyone understands clearly, especially coming from a background where we're not very culturally aware of how to have a conversation. Like that first thing when we see people in Nepal, when we're meeting friends, oh, gusto mo dako eh? It's still like, I don't think that's, you know, that's emotionally very pleasant to people to for people to hear. So for us who haven't been really trained in how to be culturally appropriate, I think emotional basement talks are really, really helpful. So that's just establishing collaboration or friendliness, just talking about, hey, you know, or if you're going to talk to a new person or a new job, it's like, hey, I've really heard great things about you. It's such a pleasure to finally have this opportunity to meet you in person, or, you know, whatever. Like if you already know them, it's like, you know, how was your weekend? How are your kids doing? Whatever establishes, or if they have a dog, talk about that, whatever it is to establish friendliness in between, just to keep their emotions under control and then have them view you as a pleasant person, right? And then really be disarming. Like disarming meaning not being defensive, just being open to them. If they're saying something that you don't agree with, saying something like, okay, if I were in your shoes, I would probably feel the same way. You know, if you don't disagree with something, you probably say something like, I didn't agree with this point, but overall I agreed with whatever else you said. So not being fake to yourself, being real, having that communication style where you end your sentence with a positive note, right? That's usually helpful. If you feel like that conversation is not going to a safe space, then you can set boundaries. And the way to set boundaries is really using don't towards the end. Like, you know, I may have agreed with a certain points you said, but I don't agree with this, and maybe I want to table the conversation. So really learning your communication style. About people usually, you know, little kids, if you give them two options, they will always choose the last option you give them. It's very similar. Things stick to their head the last thing you say. So even if you said, I disagreed with this and this and this, but I really agree with the last point you said, they'll think pleasant about, oh, you agree with me. So really trying to frame your conversation in a way where people feel like they're connected to you, they're being agreeable is important. And after that, you know, like sharing pleasantries and having that emotional talk. The ground floor talk is really sharing your facts, selling yourself, who you are, what you bring to the table, what your overall goals are, what kind of solutions you can offer to the problem the department, organization, or whatever institution you're working in is trying to accomplish. And then really, after that, really having a very knowledgeable approach or a very strategic approach to, very strategic approach to asking questions, like asking them for what kind of expected solutions, what would they hope to have? You know, acknowledge that their input, what they're saying, be very receptive and open to what they're saying. Try to agree where you can and add, modify, and mesh their solution with yours towards the end if you can, to bring you value, right? And then finally, like, have an action plan. So really starting with a very soft emotional ground, bringing connections, asking what their needs are, and then trying to find a middle ground where you can meet their needs while meeting your own, I think is the best collaborative approach whenever we can, whenever we go into a difficult negotiating situation. If it's a conflict resolution, probably same approach, but like meeting in a very neutral space. Like if you meet in a person's room who you're having conflict with, you give them more power because all of a sudden you're in their space, right? So trying to find an outdoor space like a restaurant or somewhere open, so things can stay contained. And if it gets really heated, you always have the right to say, you know, I feel like it's becoming a little more emotional and not factual, and I'd like to table this. You always have the right to say that, no matter who you're talking to. Like, you know, if you feel like someone's disrespecting you, you always have the right to point out, I feel like, you know, I feel a sense of disrespect, and I do not appreciate that. I'd like to table that for another time. Totally okay, absolutely okay. Feel empowered to say you're uncomfortable when you're uncomfortable, no matter with who you are. So also, you know, following up on our negotiation thing, really remembering that not everything can be negotiated within this moment, right? Things take time, like maybe asking for a next meeting. If you feel like things are not ending in the right note, you know, have a follow-up email and say, you know, I really enjoyed our talk. You would really like to come in person to see you again, or have a Zoom meeting to meet you again. Consider small steps, right? Trust building takes time. Like, for example, in my current job, my negotiation with my current chair started in towards the end of August. The email came to me to come to this position sometime end of August. I finally signed my letter of intent in March of next year. So really not jumping into conclusions, having a very level head, being very intentional about what your value is, while understanding what their needs are, and giving things time. Really don't compromise yourself. I mean, the fact that you're here, that tells you that's a testament to your accomplishment of what you can accomplish in life, and what goals you already have had in your life. So really, all of you here are such accomplished people. Never compromise for something that you feel is less than what you deserve. And consider avoiding until trust is built. So if you feel like they're not trusting yet, see if you can find an external person who can talk on your behalf. Oftentimes, like if people hear about you from other people and hear great things, they tend to believe you way more than when you say good things about yourself. So if there's a way to find someone that can say put in a good word for you, it's always a good thing to do. And then don't hesitate to ask for help to gain what you need to succeed, because you know, it's a part of life. We're a community where we live in, you know, we're people and we depend on each other. It's a network. So reach out to people for help. Don't feel alone, because no one truly is alone. No matter how you feel, there are always people willing to help. If anyone comes to me to ask for help, I would never say no. I'm sure that's true for almost every one of us here. So don't hesitate to ask for help. So that's kind of negotiation, but also I wanted to go into a little bit about you know, how to present yourself when you talk. So those are like facts of how to talk, but how to present yourself. So here's an interesting fact. So Albert Maubarain, who's currently a professor emeritus of psychology in UCLA, he has the 7-30-55% rule. So 55% of what you say is actually the perception of what you say, whether it's good or bad, comes from your body language. 38% of what you say comes from your tone, right? So if I want to say, you are doing such a good job, I could say, you're doing such a good job. If that would be perceived one way, you doing such a good job, that could be perceived another way. Or you are doing such a good job could be perceived a different way. The tone, your phrasing, how you say the words. Actually, only 7% is all that matters in your actual what you say. So learning how to posture yourself right, learning how to stress on the right vowels or consonants to make your tone and pace your words right is the bulk of how you are perceived as a communicator, right? And there's leadership trainings where people focus on this IPOP strategy, right? So they teach you to be very intentional on what your goal is to go when you're going to talk. Is it to inform people? Is it to persuade people? Is it to entertain people? So be very clear in your intent. Come with a presence, right? The right body language, the right facial expression, right attitude to be there. Open your mouth, meaning like don't talk with your closed lips, like open your mouth, have a very clear voice and very clear message and pithy message. Like whenever you try to talk to people, make sure your message is concise enough and in points so people can understand and remember and retain what you're trying to say. So that's called a pithy message. And I'll talk a little bit about it, show you an example towards the end. But intention, really trying to read your audience, what the purpose is, why you're there, what your goal is. Remember this, wherever you go in life, whether it's in a salary negotiation, whether it's talking to anybody, people are always thinking at the back of their head, what is it in it for me? Right? What's in it for me? So people are always thinking, okay, I paid for this ticket to watch a comedian. Like, what do I get out of it? People are by nature, always watching out for their own needs. So learning to take a second to understand whenever you go to talk to people about, okay, I'm going to talk to people. We're so consumed with our own thoughts. We never consider what is it in that person to spend that time with us, right? So what is it in it for them to spend the time with us? So really taking a second to understand what's in it for them and what can I give to them. That will make your delivery so much more powerful. And then if there's any controversy when you're in a, if I'm giving a talk, let's say in-person talk and I'm showing up with a big blotch of some dirty something on my shirt, people will be noticing. They won't say anything. It's kind of the elephant in the room. But if you get it out of the way and say, oh, hey, I was late for work and my little kid spilled a whole coffee on my shirt, but, don't mind me, then people won't even think about it twice, right? So if there's a big issue that's standing, and that's just a silly example, but there could be a bigger issue that's happening. So always address the elephant in the room first. So you lighten the mood with everybody and then start the conversation. And then, of course, your presence, how your body language, your posture, your facial expression, those are really, really important, like standing firm in the ground if you start talking. It's interesting, they say when you're moving hands, when you're doing a presentation, try not to move your hand beyond the width of your own body, because that would look less, more aggressive if you go like this. So try to limit the movements of your hands towards width of your body, being very strong, shoulder square. It's okay to have a steeple posture. If you cross arms, it makes you look very defensive. If you do this, it makes you look defensive, but steeple is okay. If someone's sitting like this in front of you, try to mirror their posture. Mirroring people's posture creates immediate sense of connection, as opposed to sitting like this when someone's facing you. So trying to create that is really trying to create that connection with your body language and posture. Pacing across, if you're trying to give a presentation, you're pacing across a lot without purpose. Pacing appropriately, that syncs with what you're saying, makes sense. But if you're pacing just all over, it makes you look like you just can't wait to get out of here. Hands on your hip when you're talking makes you look like, you're condescending. I already talked about crossing arms, makes you look like you're defensive or ready to argue. So really hands in your pocket makes you look very nervous. Rocking back and forth looks like you're uncomfortable and you're trying to comfort yourself, so you're not like feeling at ease in the situation. Turning your back to the audience or playing with your phone, all those things creates a sense of disconnect. So really being very aware of your presence, what kind of body language you show. Like you can see the same person in this image, just sitting differently. The image on the right makes it look like you're so attentive, whether, for example, imagine you're going on an interview, makes you look so attentive and so present and like you're ready to take on, as opposed to the rest of the postures, right? You may be saying exact same things, but what you bring, your facial expression, your body expression really makes a lot of difference. So this is just some of the things. Your body language must be congruent with your message. You're saying, oh, I am so interested in this job, and you're in a slouchy posture. That doesn't match, right? And always, having those gestures I talked about and facial expressions, words speak, a picture speaks louder than words. So your face speaks 1,000 words, technically. And it's interesting, Peter Drucker said, the most important thing to hear in communication is to hear what isn't being said. So really learning how to, and it takes practice. You know, these are things that are easily, if you're, you know, there's something like a resting bitch face, which is, you know, you seem so disinterested. And there are a group of people who are like, you know, this is who I am, like you accept it or not. And there are a group of people who are like, okay, this is my normal expression. What can I do? What can I do to make it seem like, you know, I'm a friendly person? And it's easy, and it's really is learned, right? There's one thing, expecting other people to accept who you are, which is not under your control. And the only thing that's under your control is yourself and what you can change about yourself. So it can be changed with practice. So really learning how to appear pleasant and congruent and mirroring people's expression is really helpful. And then really opening your mouth, articulating, trying to not use fillers like and ah while we're talking. I'm sure I did a lot of that. Not trying to uptalk, like when you're trying to say a sentence, not trying to stress at the last consonant. That makes you sound very undermining the presence of others. It's not a good tone in your voice. Not trailing off. You're trying to say something and your voice slowly trails. Again, not a good one. Glottal fry, when you have very like hoarse, crackly sound coming out, not a good one. Stressing more on vowels than on consonants helps mellow down your message, and depends on the stage where you want to talk or what you're trying to say. If you're trying to be a leader, trying to stress on something, maybe stress on consonants more, but on your day-to-day day-to-day conversations, maybe not so much. So really trying to understand where you are would be helpful when you talk. And really, you know, voice comes from your voice box, which is a function of air being pushed through your vocal cords and vibrating. So your voice becomes clearer if you give yourself enough time to breathe, right? So it's really important to have enough air in your lungs. So it goes for singing as well, but also for talking. Most people don't realize. So trying not to talk out of breath and not take breath adequately, pacing yourself would be really helpful. And then again, the good news is voice, if anyone's interested, I'm not saying this is an important part, but there's the site on YouTube that also helps train your voice. If you feel like you need help with your voice, it's a trainable thing. Anyone can improve upon it. Again, like anything else, it takes practice, but something that can easily be done. And I took this from Susan Miller, PhD, who was one of our voice trainers in one of the leadership courses that I attended. And so the last thing on IPOP was pithy message, right, which is like a concise, succinct, compact message that is impactful. For example, if I was talking about like the last topic we talked about is like how to speak properly, like, right? So the core message could be public speaking skills can be learned every time that you present a message. Think of IPOP. Number one, have an intention so your message is meaningful to the group. Number two, create your presence that the audience gains trust in the minute you walk in. Now, point three, open your throat so your voice is resonant and your speech is clearly understood. Point four, develop a pithy message that is succinct and purposeful, right? So that's like a final message, that take-home message for people to carry. So whenever you're trying to sell something, trying to be very intentional and try to say as little as you can, as much as you can in as little words as possible is always a helpful strategy. And these are just some ancillary stuff, some of the relaxing techniques. One of the things, if you're feeling a lot of stress that I find helpful and I use frequently is breathing techniques. So if you just open your mouth just very gently, and a lot of times, you know, at the back of your throat, your tongue tends to fall back at its resting space and tends to partially occlude the back of your glottis. So if you try to push the tongue towards your upper incisors and open your mouth gently, take a deep breath, that helps you breathe much easier than letting your tongue fall back. And you can practice for a second right here, like try to push your tongue behind your incisors. Take a deep breath and try to do it without pushing your tongue behind your upper incisors, and you'll see the difference. And really, that's really also trying to do heart breathing, where you feel like you're really taking deep breath in and out of your heart. And while you're doing that, if you want to relax, visualizing something that really brings joy to you, whether it's your kids, your family, your dog, whatever it is that brings joy to you. So you're in a situation of stress, you feel like your throat is closing up, use that breathing technique, push your tongue against your upper molar to open up your throat and breathe, and try to do heart breathing while visualizing something relaxing and calming, and that can bring your emotions down and help reset your mood. So that's all I had to say. A lot of things I learned is through several leadership courses that I've attended. And these are like, not just like, I went and attended, these are like, my chair in my previous program recommended me for some of these courses for some of the activities I had to accomplish, and that helped me a lot in learning what I learned today. So that's all I have to say, and I'll kind of stop sharing and take any questions that you have.
Thank you so much. That was such a lot of valuable information. I think a little bit we all know, but to that depth, I didn't know. I've learned a lot. I'm sure everybody here has learned a lot too. So please unmute yourself or share your question in the chat, whatever you feel comfortable. And I'd also like to invite Dr. Pravesh Vasneth, our NAPA board member. He's also gonna, join us and drive the conversation.
So, Shraddha, excellent presentation. Excellent presentation. There were so many things that was so interesting. And like Priya said, we have heard a few things here and there, but this was very well done. I'm actually very interested in that vocal training thing. I will actually pull it up as you tell us what it is. You said it's on YouTube?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. So I think the take home, and I do apologize, I put in so many things packed into a short time frame. So there were so many things I touched upon, because I felt like, in order to have work-life balance, it's really important to manage your time, be organized, have good communication strategy, learn how to delegate tasks, and all that. And it was a huge topic, so I tried to cramp in a lot of things. I apologize. What I tried to deliver was not pithy at all, but I really put this together in the last 2 hours. So as I was delivering it, I realized there was so much a chunk of stuff. But the bottom line, what I wanted to say was, a lot of things that we want to address burnout and we want to grow in is learnable. These are all things, if we're intentional, that we can change. Like, none of us are static in where we are. So whether we want to change the tone of our voice, whether we want to be a better communicator, whatever we want to do, these are learnable. And to your question, Pravesh, voice thing, yes, I can pull back that slide, and that's one of them. If you just YouTube or Google, there's so many of them. And then if you're willing to pay, there's dedicated voice trainers. I've never done it myself, but if any of you feel like, my voice is something that I really want to change, that would make me a happier person, there are people there to train, right? So any of these aspects, or your mindset we can change our mindset. Everything we can change to have a better perception in life, to have a better productivity in life, to have better resilience in life. And that was truly like the message I was trying to deliver. Would you like me to share I can look up and share the YouTube thing right here with you.
Sure.
Sure, thank you.
So, let me add a little perspective on this, excellent presentation. So I wear two hats. I'm a consulting psychiatrist who runs a consult service, and then I'm partner in a collaborative health company. And so where I actually hire people, and then I negotiate with health systems about them running our program. And so, which has been so eye-opening. I've always been on the other seat where I give interviews to people. I mean, I'm interviewed, and when I interview, one of the things as psychiatrists you want to know is you are actually interviewing us, the employer, because there is so many employers and so few psychiatrists. Nothing to worry. Unless you are like terrible, you have the job. like walk in and know. I have honestly, like the other thing I will say is, don't overshare, don't be too anxious. Go in and know that the job is yours, and it is there to be negotiated. And I see this a lot among women, that they are so agreeable. You quote, this is what I'm, they're like, yeah, I'll take this. No, you won't take this. Do not take anything that anyone gives you. Everything is up for discussion and negotiation. The only thing you have to do beforehand is do the research on what is the average this field pays in this area, and then everything is up for negotiation, because there is way many employers who want people, and then there are way few psychiatrists out there to take jobs. And so the employers should be anxious, not the interviewer. And so, please don't give in. The other thing I would say, not just in terms of this excellent presentation on work-life balance, the problem occurs, there's this excellent thing Dr. Mainali talked about, which I loved, which is, if you think of your mind as a computer and you have 100 different pages opened up, you're not really working, your computer slows down. And so the things you have to, it's always good to, when you start something, you finish it. So, I'll give you some examples that I've done. Since I'm basically doing 2 full-time jobs, you have to be efficient. So anytime I open an email, I get an email, whatever needs to be done, I do it right away. You cannot have this, I'll save it, I'll flag it. That's nonsense. You finish it and then you're done. And regarding, work-life balance, other thing is, we have, like, being doctors, we've always excelled at something. So we always want to do an excellent job. And the other thing is, we really never say no. Because we came to this field because we are compassionate, nice, good people, and we want to help, right? One thing to keep in mind is, when you are saying yes to someone, you're saying no to someone else, because the time is limited. When your administrator comes and says, can you see this extra patient at 4:30? What I hear is, can you spend 1 hour less with your daughter? And my answer is no. When you are pushed to do something that you're not regularly doing, please, the most important word in English language is no. So people have to feel comfortable with saying no, and we are terrible at saying no. We have to say no. And as an administrator, I'll tell you from that angle, that I know the people who say yes, and I know the people who say no. Who do I go to? I go to the people who say yes. And they're nice, good people. Guess what? They are the ones that get burnt out. And so that's such an important thing on burnout. You have to have really strong boundaries on that. And as long as you do your job, that's all is actually expected from you. And so I will give you this example that a lot of people in the hospital know I'm the main psychiatrist, and they feel so comfortable calling me all the time. When I go on vacation, guess what I do? I block the hospital number. And I over the weekend, the other thing I've done is I delete the hospital email from my phone. It's not a need. You don't need to check the hospital email all the time. And I reach there at 8 o'clock. I leave at 4 o'clock, and then I shut down that internal communication. Whatever is there can be done on the next day. Even if the note is missing, guess what? It can be done the next day. I'm not going to come home and do the notes and intrude on my family and then bring work to home. And then at work, you're trying to finish the jobs that you're supposed to do at home. And that is what leads to burnout. And so the other thing she highlighted, which I loved really a lot, is meditation. It is so important. It is so important. I now practice meditation every day. I go to work, 15 to 30 minutes of meditation. After that, you are ready to tackle the world. And the couple of hours after that is the best time of the day. And then you do the toughest works at that time. But I don't want to take too much time, but as an employer, I will tell you that go into the interview with confidence and know what you want and ask for that. If they cannot provide you, so be it. There are 100 other employers lining up outside, and no need to bend yourself to their whims. The other thing I would say is somebody offers you a big sign-on bonus, big red flag. Somebody offers you a long contract, big red flag.
Thank you, Pravishtai. They were really good pointers, in addition to what Shraddha already mentioned. And I think, I'm thinking of this as, as we all know, we're mostly invited, mostly of Nepal, but Aiko immigrant physicians. I think it's a very difficult position to be in. You're coming to this country where you're relearning everything. And you go into residency, you're focused on getting the work done, getting things settled, learning about the new ways of life, all of that. And then many times we don't know what is salary negotiating. Like, what is your worth? And how do I ask for it? I think there's a big hesitation on our end. We do not know how to put forth our own worth. And that is something we all need to learn. It's a really important aspect.
I would say to that, one of the things is, again, like being mindful of what we contribute, what value we bring. That's something nobody takes time to reflect on, right? And as soon as you're aware of the value you bring, the amount of work you do, and really when you go into negotiation, understanding what their needs are, and then who are you to fulfill that, right? So if you have nothing to offer, it's hard to ask just because you're not going to bring anything on the table. But really, most of the times, especially women, we undervalue ourselves. We don't recognize the value that we bring when we truly are extremely valuable. The work we bring, the dedication we bring, if you have national, international presence that you bring to the table, whatever you bring, you just have to put all that value together and weigh it against just some ordinary, not ordinary, but another person of a different gender, and try to identify how they sell themselves, right? Like, one of the eye-opening thing for me in life generally is really trying to go to places and meet people in big leadership positions and recognizing, wow, they're like half as smart as me. They're like half as good as me. Why are they there, right? Like, really realizing it doesn't take someone exceptional to be a leader. It doesn't take someone great to be in a great position. It just takes an intent and a strategic approach and like a good sense of communication, really. So really recognizing that you don't have to be someone exceptional to be someone to be perceived as someone exceptional was eye-opening to me. And I happened to be in these leadership courses because like for the positions I had to do, like I was referred through my institution to go there. But there are other leadership programs across the nation that are open for anybody to join, right? And one of the things you truly learn is really you're no different. I was an average student, average school student, average medical student. I'm still an average thing, and I don't feel like I'm average because so is everybody else, right? You see all these big people in leadership positions and they're no different, right? So really trying to be very intentional about what you want, working towards that goal every single day. Sometimes you have to be strategic. Some things you can't just spend so much effort that doesn't take you forward, right? So really taking a step back to see what is the strategy that person took? What's the strategy that person took? If that's your goal, trying to understand the strategy and spend your effort and time in things that move you forward. And that's being intentional. So a lot of us, women especially, we're so giving. We like Pravesh said, if you say yes to something, you say no to something else, right? So we're so giving in our time, in our effort to people, so happy to say yes. The biggest thing that has been most rewarding to me personally is learn how to say no and say it gracefully. You don't have to be mean about it, right? Just, I'm sorry, I don't have the bandwidth at the time. Thank you so much for considering me for this. Unfortunately, I don't have the time right now. Unfortunately, I'm working on something else. In a very nice way, be able to even refer someone else, like, building your line of people that you help, right? And that makes you it puts you in a better position already, because when you start helping people, you build your own community that will in turn help you, right? So really be intentional and learning when to say no, and learning no a lot, which is kind of like my mantra, learning no a lot, learning to say no a lot, because that saves you time to do things that are truly intentional and purposeful to you as a person.
Thank you, Shraddha. Yeah, I'm going to add to that. A little bit of cultural layering is also there. हामीलाई नेपालमा अब मान्छेहरूलाई नो भन्नलाई एकदमै गाह्रो. It's a cultural aspect too. I think that flavor comes in too. And the other aspect is intimidation. Yeah, like when you're sitting down at the table, you're like so intimidated, whatever your background is. I think that's the thing, that fear. Should I really open my mouth? If I open my, what am I risking? Am I risking too much? Am I going to lose my job? This khalko thoughts, I think they really come, and it becomes an obstacle. And I'm sure there are ways to overcome that. Shraddha, if you could highlight that.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. So one of the leadership programs I went to, was really funny. What she said was, if you feel like you're going to talk to someone in a powerful position, that's just an image you have, right? You have an image of them. There's nothing, it's just another person, but you have an image that they're big and powerful. Try to view them in a different image. So what she recommended was try to view them sitting with just their underwear on, looking like just a very silly human being. Try to, whatever it is, don't try to picture them in a perfectly suited person that looks very powerful, but try to visualize them as someone, just a regular human being in their underwear. Or something, something that brings their image down in your mind to a level that you can communicate with, right? And then when you're nervous, when you're very, really emotional, try to use those breathing techniques. Try to open up your throat, try to breathe, do the heart breathing or whatever, and take a few minutes before you step into calm your emotions. That kind of stimulates your vagus nerve, kind of, decreases your sympathetic drive and makes you calm. So I mean, honestly, at this point in my life, nothing scares me. So nobody intimidates me. But if I do feel intimidated with something, I've learned to just use that strategy to just bring them down as a normal person that I'm communicating with, And then if you're really factual, if you're going into a conversation and look at people as someone so important and you feel less than them, then you're in your emotional basement. You're going in that conversation, not with facts, but with emotions, right? So bring your emotion down and just try to tell yourself it's just another person. I'm there for a purpose, and try to put your purpose and facts in front of your emotions, right? So don't go in a conversation with emotions, whether it's good emotion or bad emotion, right? So go with facts, and that's helpful in general.
I totally agree with that.
Okay, thank you, Shraddha. I think it's हाम्रो घरमा हुन्छ नि घरि यो तरकारी त्यो तरकारी अलिकति भात गरेर खाएर हुन्थ्यो. आज चाहिँ उमा गएर ठकारीकोमा गएर पुरै थाली खा जस्तै भयो हैन. सबै कुरा टन्न राखेर डम्मसँग खाने जस्तो हैन. थ्यांक यू. खासमा मेरो एउटा कमेन्ट छ अनि एउटा अर्को चाहिँ I want to ask if you can tell a little bit more about it. यो mindfulness is used so often now, हैन. mindfulness को चाहिँ मेरो विचारमा चाहिँ दुईटा कम्पोनेन्ट छ जस्तो लाग्छ हैन. एउटा चाहिँ being mindful भने चाहिँ साच्चै think गर्ने, सोच्ने, विचार गर्ने, डिसाइड गर्ने एउटा खाले think mindfulness हो भने हैन. जुन mindfulness training अहिलेको ट्रेन्डमा भएको mindfulness छ, that's actually completely opposite, where you don't think, you just sense, use your sensory organs to almost ground you and be in the present. So the दुईटा कन्सेप्ट छ हैन, त्यो चाहिँ मिक्स अप भएर जस्तो लाग्छ. मान्छेले कतिचोटि चाहिँ राम्रो एकदम intentional hard work गरेर आउला, okay, don't tell me I'm being very mindful भन्छ. मेरो विचारमा त्यो चाहिँ अर्कै mindful हो हैन. अनि यो हामीले अर्को भनेको यो रिल्याक्सेसनमा स्ट्रेसमा युज हुने mindfulness चाहिँ अलि अर्कै हो. त्यो चाहिँ मैले त्यो मेरो कमनली चाहिँ काममा भइरहने कुरा मैले भन्न खोजेको. अर्को त्यो जुन प्रायोरिटी ग्रिड तिमीले देखाएको थियो नि, त्यसमा चाहिँ जुन चाहिँ अर्जेन्सी र इम्पोर्टेन्सको चाहिँ त्यो ग्रिड छ, त्यसमा धेरै मान्छेहरूले चाहिँ त्यो ग्रिड बुझ्या हुन्छ. कति धेरै चाहिँ हामी पर्सनली आफू पनि पहिला चाहिँ हाम्रो ब्रिङ्गिङ अपले गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ धेरै थाहा नभएको चाहिँ कति धेरै टाइममा एक्ज्याक्टली के इम्पोर्टेन्ट हो मलाई भन्ने नै थाहा हुँदैन हैन अनि do you have anything to kind of help suggest people how to work on that, how to decide what is important now versus in long term, like more like a short term and long term goals, if you want to go with more like Bill Clinton kind of way? Do you have anything that you want to suggest for people?
Yeah, so I think that comes down to having an intention, right? So a lot of us are living life without, if you live life without intention, you want to know what's important for you, what's not important for you. You're just walking through life doing things, you're getting burnt out. You don't know what you're moving towards, right? So it's really important for all of us to have a big life goal, like things that we want, like, you know, like really try to understand what is it that I want to achieve overall, my whole overall life goal, and then short-term goals, right? Having that far out goal is not helpful to do your day-to-day activity. Having short-term goals is important, right? So being intentional about, okay, what do I want to accomplish this year? That's a good start. What do I want to accomplish this month? What do I want to accomplish this week? You don't have to think about every week, every month, but thinking about at least what do I want to accomplish this year? This task that I'm trying to do, is this moving me closer towards the goal, moving me away from the goal? If you do not set intention, it's so easy to be lost, right? You can keep doing all the things you're doing without knowing if it's adding value to your life or not adding value to your life. So number one step is setting intention and goal for yourself. Again, setting a goal for yourself, like my daughter is a competitive swimmer and their goal is always getting shorter times than you did last time. It's never being first, never being second, never that. Right? How to get a shorter time, how to swim in a shorter time than you swam last time. And that's exactly what we all should have as our life goal. How to get better than what we were last year. So what's my goal this year? If your goal is, you know, to get promoted, then that's your goal. If your goal is to lose 10 pounds, then that's your goal. If your goal is to have more presence with your family and really spend mindful time with your family, then that's your goal. Like set the goal that you want and then prioritize based on the goal. So without the goal, without intention, no one will know what's right for them, right? So that's number one step. And in terms of being mindful, I think mindfulness is just awareness of what's happening within you and around you. That's all there is, right? Well, you talked about the first example about being mindful when you're so focused. You're not mindful, you're focused, you're concentrating. That's different. A mindful person, if they're focused, would respond to the surrounding, but say, oh, I'm trying to get this done. Would it be okay if I get back to you, right? You being aware of yourself, who you are as a person. Are you comfortable? Are you uncomfortable? Why are you uncomfortable? What's happening to you? What's my surrounding like? Is that, you know, do I need to change my surrounding? Does it work for you? Just being aware of self and surrounding is mindfulness, whatever way you do it, whether you do it through meditation, whether you just think about it before bedtime for 5 minutes, reflect through your day. I like that because my schedule is not very predictable. So I just when I go to bed, I at least take 5 minutes to think through the events that happened through the day or through the week if I didn't have time to do it the last couple of days, and think what went right, what went wrong. And I learn from that and say, what could I have done better? And these things, although it doesn't train me at the moment, these things are processing in my mind, at the back of my mind. So if I face that similar problem later down the line, I'll know I'll have a better strategy to solve it. It happens organically. I don't even have to make an effort. But if I just take that and make that intentional and reflect through things, I've learned something without forcing knowledge in my head. Does that make sense? So reflection is helpful and setting intention and goal is helpful.
Thank you, Shraddha. That's
Thank you.
very, very helpful. I don't know if the audience here had questions. Chat ma type गरिनुहुन्छ, or you could just unmute yourself. It's really valuable time we have.
They might not be comfortable asking questions here, and they might want to reach you directly. How is there a way for them to do it?
Absolutely. I mean, I see a lot of names. I know like over 60% are my friends. Anytime, call me.
Okay, cool.
And those who I didn't know are my friends, we have connection. You have VCU connection. Pravesh is my brother's friend. I mean, it's a small world. We're all connected in some way. So feel free to reach out anytime. So I usually, I'm happy to share my email here. I usually use Twitter for my professional stuff, like if I want to share something. If you have Twitter and you want to join, it's like @Mainali Shraddha. I don't use it very often, like once a month or something, but just for just for friends and family, I use Facebook, and not very often, but I do have that for friends and family. But if you want to just email me, I can share my email.
Thank you, Shraddha.
I'm Serena, and I just want to say, Shraddha Didi, this was an excellent presentation. I loved it. I know Shraddha Didi for quite a while, and she's been a great mentor for me to help, navigate when I started doing a fellowship in neurocritical care last year, 2 years ago. So she was there for me. I just wanted to say that to everybody. She helped me negotiate that contract, and she really literally went through all the stuff for me. So I'm really grateful for that, Shraddha Didi. I just wanted to share 2 things about burnout. One was changing your diet. And this comes from American College of Lifestyle Medicine. I'm actually giving the board exam this year. And changing your diet, which we don't often do in residency. And that really, really changes your life. Supplementing vitamins like magnesium, that really also gives you a lot of energy and helps you with burnout. The second thing that I recently learned was about the Oz principle. And this also goes along the growth mindset that Shraddha Didi was talking about. And whenever you get thoughts, any negative thoughts, there's 2 kinds of thoughts that can come: above the belt and below the belt. And so kind of put yourself, whenever you get a thought like that, what is it? Is it above the belt or below the belt? And that really helps you navigate a lot of things in your work, and really helps you get through burnout. So just wanted to share those thoughts. And thank you, Shraddha Didi. Excellent presentation. I'm so glad you did this for everybody. Every Nepalese girl who's working out there, who's trying to negotiate her salary and everything. And I think this was an excellent presentation for them. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Serena. It's and I wasn't aware that I helped you, but I'm so glad I could. I'm happy to help more if you need it. But I love that part you said about diet. I mean, I don't think we should. That's as a neurointensivist. We have a multidisciplinary team, and one of the person rounding with me is a nutritionist. So we really ingrain, and like all of us know as physicians, that all these minerals and vitamins are coenzymes in our cellular processes, right? So you can't just have substrates and calories without the coenzymes. It's not gonna. There's a bottleneck. Whether it's healing or cellular processing, it's not optimal. So really important to have good diet and healthy lifestyle. There's no doubt about it. It's whether it's burnout or whatever you're tackling in life. That's an excellent point. Thank you for adding that, Serena.
Thank you, Serena. I think you're next. Now that I know. I think diet is something I've never really thought about. I mean, I read a little bit, but I would like to learn more, and thank you.
So now you will become intentional about it.
Yes. I think you just have to choose the right kind of food in the USA, and you just have to pick grass-fed food, organic food, and have to pick the right kind of vitamins. Not all vitamins that you buy everywhere is good. So I spent a lot of time last year and even this year on that. So, definitely a topic worth discussing more, I guess.
Thank you. And Pravishtai, thank you so much for adding the employer side of the coin. I think most of us are not on that side. I think the anxiety only commons, and I don't know if you wanted to add more since we don't have a lot of questions right now.
I think it also says what Shraddha just told earlier. The employer will be somebody like Pravesh, who is just one of us,
Yeah.
Employer is more anxious because honestly, like the most stressful thing about running like our company is finding good psychiatrists. That's the most important thing, and it's close to impossible to find one. And so when you find one, you are going to do anything and everything to keep them. And so the person, and when you interview that person, that's like, yeah, okay, do everything. You're like, wow, what's going on here? And so, but I'll tell you two other things about negotiation. I would like to know how much, say if I'm interviewing Priya, right? I would like to know beforehand how much she's making, so that I can guess at what point she would agree. So that's a really valuable information you should give. So if nobody will say directly how much you're making, but even if they say how much you're making, you can just direct it to, I'm really, right now I'm satisfied with what I'm making, or I'm not satisfied with what I'm making, and I'm doing this because I'm moving, whatever. The time to bring it up is when the interview process is done, you have the job, which is really likely that you'll have the job. And then they tell you this is going to be your salary. And then you can say, this is what I'm making right now. I'm really not looking to make less than what I'm making right now. And what you're making is whatever you say you're making. There's no way to confirm, because the people that your interviewer talks to are the people you want them to talk to, which are your colleagues. So they don't really know how much you're making. So you don't really have to be 100% honest with this. You can say like you're making 300, you can say you're making 400, but you could say you're making 325. No way to know. And the other thing is, salary is not the only thing you are negotiating. That is one of the things that I think people sometimes don't realize, is there is so much other things to negotiate. One of the things you can always negotiate is this administrative time, which anyone brings it up, that really pisses me off. But it is something which is so valuable. You can say that, I don't know any friends that work 40 weeks, 40 hours in a week. So if it's a fixed salary, try your best not to work 40 hours. Say, I would need some administrative time. And so work 36 hours. That 4 hours will be so valuable in finishing the work that you have not finished, right? The other things you can bargain with is CME money. Or whether the employer will pay for board certification, whether the employer will pay for tail, because if there is no tail coverage, guess what? You're like unsatisfied with the job, you're trying to leave. Now it's $6,000 to $8,000 for the tail coverage. So a lot of the employers will pay tail coverage, but what they will do is, honestly, what I would do is take sign a long contract, and if you leave before that, then there's no tail coverage. And so you negotiate on having a tail coverage. First of all, don't sign like 3 or 5 year contracts, period. Nothing longer than 1 year. And then after you sign, you make sure that you would have tail coverage. The other thing to think about is the worst employers will give you a long contract and a big sign-on bonus, and then now you're stuck. Because say if it's a 5-year contract, and it's a 50,000 sign-on bonus. Out of 50,000, you got 30,000 because 20,000 went on taxes. And now it's the 4th year, you're sick and tired, you're dying. But then you have to come up with 50,000 to pay the employer. Long contract, big sign-on bonus, no.
There's a caveat to that. For academics, though, it depends, because sometimes it might be more helpful to have a longer contract upfront with a higher salary. Because, for example, it depends if you have protected time. For example, I have research protected time and protected salary, which is equivalent or higher than my people who do clinical work. So if I have a longer protected time, let's say 3 years of protected salary, even if I see less patients than my colleagues, while I'm doing my research work, I continue to be compensated. The minute that ends, then you go into your comp plan, your compensation plan, which will be equal, and that will be redistributed. And that's almost always guaranteed to give you less if you do less clinical work, because most money is in clinical work, right? So it depends who you are, what you're negotiating, but totally agree. Like, you can negotiate instruments for your lab. You can negotiate CME money, how many conferences to pay for, and you can negotiate if I'm a speaker. Every single one that I'm speaking has to be compensated because I'm bringing in my, institutional name. There's so many factors outside salary that are negotiable that are in fact more valuable to you in the long run if you choose to be in an institution. But like for private practice, totally makes sense to do a short contract so you leave whenever you want.
And also vacation time, you can negotiate. You can get 4 to 6 weeks, depending on.
Yeah, I've heard of some of my friends when they're entering a new job. We're from Nepal. We need like longer time. They even put that forth in the contract, which I wasn't aware of. But not that I have a problem with that. But that's something negotiable, something you can bring on the table before you join, if you have such needs.
I think in a bigger institution, a lot of those things are standard for everybody, and there are few things you negotiate like very specific to your job and your title that comes with it. Some of the things might be just standard, like vacation and some CME money. It might be just standard for everybody.
I agree with you there. The CME money usually standard, but see, for example, what can you use the CME money for?
Yeah.
And so so that there is some negotiating room, and even after you are in the job, you can find wiggle room. For example, I got 1 week more vacation time. Compared to like their standard thing, which is this is a big health system, and they were not flexible. And I told them that my expertise and the long experience was counted from the time I graduated medical school. Not the time that I graduated from my fellowship, which was in 2014. I counted the time from early 2000s when I graduated medical school. And here, there is no real medical school graduation after you start working. That means you have finished residency, right? Nobody is looking at all it's there. Everything is negotiable. You don't want to be this person who is nitpicky and they think like, oh my God, this person is going to be hell to work with. But to some reason, there's so much you can negotiate.
Yeah, that's smart.
And I think it's important, like Shraddha mentioned, I think, working in academic institute and other like private practice or whatever community, it's important to know what we can negotiate. Exactly. Many times I feel like, I get like, because you didn't know about it. And I think that information should flow too.
I think the way to approach that is to have a mindset that everything is negotiable until proven otherwise.
Yeah.
It's all about
100%.
value you bring. It's all about meeting the needs, right? And CME is negotiable, right? It depends. They do say standard this much, but depends on where the fund comes from, right? So amount that's coming from a standard fund may not be negotiable, but as long as the chair needs you there and wants you there, then it will come from some other fund. Right? So there are so many pockets of fund. There's like philanthropic funds. There's like Department of Fund, the chair package fund. And if anyone does research, there's a startup package. Your seed fund to do research is hugely negotiable in hundreds of thousands of dollars. So the mindset to go in really is everything is negotiable until proven otherwise. So you never get something you don't ask for. And the only thing that you want to be really, really careful about is learning how to ask right? You don't want to just say, I want this, and be very factual about it, like really learning their needs and then bringing your value on how can fulfill that and then asking your need, right? So you got to be valuable to them for them to give you more than what they would give anybody else, right? So learning your value, always being self-aware of who you are and what you bring on the table, and then having that mindset that it's okay to have a conversation in a right way, not being demanding and not being difficult, but just in a way that you're speaking out for yourself in a very humble way, in a very matter-of-factly way. I think there's a long way to go with that. It's totally possible.
It's so correct. You know, one thing you can slip in your conversation is how does this help their institution? You know, I tried something which I failed at, but I did have to. I did try to make them pay for my Spanish language class from CME. They said no, but I asked. You know, who cares? The other thing is if you can. Every time you go ask for something, instead of just asking them, can you do this? Can you do that? The best way to do it is, you know, this is the problem that I'm having. These are the solutions that I see. And can we work on any of these? That sounds so much better from administrative perspective, that, you know, you really don't want people throwing problems at you, but say you do have a problem, but somebody comes with a solution and then I get to pick one of them. That's really nice.
Well, thank you, Shraddha. I think she needs to leave and she's excusing herself. Thank you so much on behalf of NAPA, and I think she's left. I don't know if there's any more question. I think Dr. Basnath here can answer. We can carry this discussion for a little bit, few minutes longer.
And if we don't have any questions, maybe this is time to stop now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so it looks like we don't hear any questions so far. And Shraddha is gone. We already thanked. Thank you, Pravis. We get to hear from the other side of the story too. I'm a little bit of that, but I don't really have to deal with the contract negotiation and a lot of those HR deals, bulk of it. I only do a little bit of it, so I'm not too experienced on that part, but I agree with most of the thing Pravis said also, and I want to thank everyone who joined, and especially Priya, who took time to organize everything and make this going. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Okay,
Bye.
bye-bye.
Thank you.